If I was to ask you what you valued in life, what would you say to me? Up until about 2 years ago, I wouldn't have been able to answer that myself, and that scares the living shit out of me because it makes me realize that I was going about my day without any values and without any goals in mind. Part of me felt like I'd done nothing with my life, and when I tried to think of something to do, I just couldn't think of anything because nothing interested me. So, as this boy does on occasion, he went to extreme measures and decided to absolutely blow his shit up. He quit 2 jobs, he backpacked through Europe for 4 months, and he did something that he never really thought he would do, but something that he always felt behind in life for not doing. That boy is me, by the way. And whilst travel didn't magically fix the feeling of being behind in life, taking a break from that same routine that I'd built and upkept for 27 years did. It made me realize I wasn't actually behind in life, I just didn't have a clear direction. I had no goals that I was working towards and no values that made me push through the stuff that I didn't want to do. Does that sound familiar? If you feel behind in life, it's for one of two reasons. You either have weak values that don't allow you to push through the stuff that you don't want to do to get to the place you want to be, or you haven't even identified what those values are yet, and you're judging your life based on everyone else's idea of success, even though deep down you might not want that. Now, I'm not going to bullshit you and say you're exactly where you need to be right now because I don't know that, and secondly, it's probably not true anyway. It's not important where you are. You are where you are. That's it. The important thing is where you want to go. That's what guides your life. That's what gives you direction. And that's what you're lacking at the moment. If you don't have a clear set of values, then you don't have any goals you're working towards. You can't build your daily routine and your habits around that. And the direction of where you want to go becomes incredibly blurry and hard to map out. And at the same time, you're watching these people on social media achieving these incredible things at 21, getting rich, buying Lamborghinis, and deep down you're jealous of that because you think that's what you value when really it's not. In those months leading up to quitting my job and escaping to Europe, I genuinely thought escape was the only escape. I thought that was the only way I could get away from these thoughts and this internal judgment and this feeling of not having done anything with my life. And whilst that may feel like the easiest option right now, there is still going to be a time where you just have to come back and face it all again. That time came for me 4 months later when I came home from Europe and I touched down and realized, shit, I got to get a job. I got to get a job doing something that I don't really want to do. And that escape didn't work because now I'm back in this internal dialogue of mine that I haven't familiarized myself with, that just traveled over to Europe and forgot about and came back, and here come all these thoughts just bombarding back to me, and I hadn't solved anything. But the best thing about traveling to the other side of the world was realizing that traveling to the other side of the world isn't the answer. It's not the escape. I have to deal with this internal dialogue here. As much as I hate it sometimes, I have to deal with it here because this is my life. This is the life I'm going to live. And escaping didn't work. And that forced me to focus on the things that I could change, the daily habits, the routines, the values, the goals, because those are the things that guide your life. The escape is temporary, but all of that stuff is permanent. So now I've got another question for you. What do you want in life? And that is a hard question to answer. I know that. I've only really started to figure out what I want this year. I'm 29 now. I'm getting on. I turn 30 this year. That's terrifying, but it took me a long time to figure out what it is I actually want. And one of the most powerful ways you can do that is by figuring out first what you don't want. And this is where the power of the anti-vision comes to life. Figuring out what you don't want, figuring out what you despise, what you hate. Those are strong words, but it works in this instance. Figuring out what you hate to figure out what you love, to figure out your direction and where you want to go. So I'm going to be one of those really annoying people right now and tell you to get out a pen and paper. I'm going to make you do an exercise. If someone asked me to do this, I would despise them, but I'm doing the same thing. But it works, so I'm going to get you to do it. I want you to write down a situation both in working and living. So you'll have two situations, your work situation and your living situation. Write down the absolute worst situation you can imagine in 5 years, your situation that makes you cringe, what you really don't want to be doing for work, what you really don't want to be doing living at home where you don't want to live. I want you to write that down and really sit with it. So my living anti-vision when I wrote it down was living with roommates in a loud house in a loud neighborhood where I could not control my own peace. My working anti-vision is commuting to an office 5 days a week to take orders from someone I don't want to take orders from and work on creative projects that I don't want to work on. And I'm happy to talk about my anti-vision for work and my anti-vision for life. And it's so easy for me because it resonates with me in everyday life. This is what I base all of my decisions around to make sure these anti-visions don't come true. And what makes these anti-visions so damn powerful is as soon as you write them down, you automatically see what you value. So from those two short sentences alone, I can now see what I value. In a living sense, I value living alone in a peaceful, quiet home where I can control my own peace. In a working sense, I value working for myself on my own creative projects and not having to answer to anyone and not having to travel anywhere to work. And once you figure that out, the question then becomes, well, how do you make all of that a reality? That is now your direction. That's where you're heading. And it sounds so obvious to say, oh, I value living alone in a clean, quiet, peaceful place. But unless you write it down, unless you have something to work towards, you don't have anything else guiding your everyday decisions. So now if I do want to make that living dream come to life, I have to have enough money and earn enough money to live alone. I have to reduce my expenses to make this viable long term. And for my working situation, I would have to work on my own creative projects to get them to a point where I could take them over full time and I wouldn't have to answer to anyone else. And this is difficult, but this is the stuff I'm trying to work out right now. This is giving me life. This is giving me purpose. This is what's guiding everyday decisions for me. And this is the point of the video where I have to admit something to you. There's no such thing as being behind in life. There's simply alignment and misalignment. Clear values and goals are so important because they allow you to align your everyday decisions and your everyday actions to what you actually want. Now, everything you do throughout your day, your week, your year need to tie back to this life that you're trying to build. You don't buy that shitty product because you're trying to save the money to be able to live alone, which is something you value. You spend a few extra hours on the weekend working on your creative projects so you don't have to answer to someone because that's what you value. When you finally begin measuring your life according to the things that you value and actually taking the steps to get there, everything just becomes so much easier because you've got a direction. You suddenly stop feeling behind in life because you're not comparing yourself to others. You're just comparing yourself to where you know you need to be. And if you're not there, it's because you haven't put in the work, and that's simple. You stop feeling behind because you realize there's no such thing. You've just been misaligned this whole time. Now you're finally aligned because everything just seems to be falling into place. You have this direction. But you should know having this clear direction doesn't mean you're necessarily not going to fail. You're still going to fail. Things are going to fail all the time, but failure is so important. And when you're aligned with your values and your goals and the life you want to build towards, these failures start to hurt less and they start to become more like lessons. When you have that thing you know you want to achieve and you won't stop at anything to get there, you'll be surprised how much extra shit you can put up with. I hope this has helped with whatever thoughts you've been having. Thank you very much for watching and good luck with whatever you do next.